Hello all, I welcome you for today's session, which is Introduction to C Programming. In today's lecture, we are going to cover the data types in C Programming. First, we will have a recap of the last session. In the last session, we have covered the various C programming operators, that is arithmetic operator, relational operator, logical operator, assignment operator, increment, decrement operator, conditional operator, bitwise operator, and special operator. The objectives of today's session is to learn data types and classification of data types in C programming. And what will be the outcome? So you will be able to apply and manage the data in C programming after this session. Now, in today's session, we are going to cover the two topics. First one is the data types in C programming. In that, we'll see the three types of data types, that is fundamental data types, derived data types, and user-defined data types. And in the next part, we will see the C input output. What is data types? In the earlier sessions, we have learned the concept of variable. Variable is a memory location where we can store the data. The type of data which is stored in this memory location is referred as the data types in C programming. In other way, it is said that it is used to declare a variable. This determines the type of and the size of data associated with the variables. Now here we can see the syntax int a equals to 10. This means the a is a integer type of variable and which holds the value 10. Basically, this int is a representation of data. How much memory is required to store the data and what type of data is allowed to store is nothing but the data types in C programming. Now the question is, can we store -13, that is negative integer? Now of course we can store this negative integer in this int type of variable. So it is allowed. Now if we say consider 10, can we store this number in this int variable? Yes, we can store this 10 into this variable. Now can we store this 3.14 number into this? The answer of this question is no, because it requires different type of data type, that is decimal value is not allowed in this integer type of data. It is used to store in different type of data types, that is float. So data type represents two things, that is how much memory is required to store the data and type of data is allowed to store. What are the classification of data types in C programming? It is classified into three types. First one is the fundamental data types. It is also called as primitive data types. Second, that is derived data types. And the third one, that is user-defined data types. Fundamental data types, it is also called as primary data types, in which we are having four different categories: int, char, float, and void. Derived data types, the data types that are derived from the primitive or inbuilt data types are referred as derived data types. That means which are derived from these fundamental data types. And the examples are array, string, and pointer. And the last one is the user-defined data types. The data types that are defined by the user are called the user-defined derived data type. The examples are structure, union, enum, and type def. Primary or fundamental data types in C programming includes the four most basic data types, that is int, character, float, and void. Int, it is responsible for storing integers. The memory it occupies depend on the compiler, that is 32 or 64 bit. In general, int data types occupies 4 bytes of memory when working with the 32-bit compiler. Character data type. It can be used to store a set of all characters which may include alphabets, numbers, and special characters. It occupies 1 byte of memory, being the smallest addressable unit of machine containing a fundamental character set. Float data type. It is responsible for storing fractions or digits up to 7 decimal places. It is usually referred to a single precision floating point type. It occupies 4 bytes of memory. In this we are having 3 subcategories of float, that is float, double, and long double. This double basically is responsible for storing fraction or digit up to 15 to 16 decimal places. It is usually referred to as a double precision floating point type. And the last one is the void, that is null data type. It is also called as null data type. Generally it is used with the function. It indicates 0 or no return value. It is generally used to assign the null value while declaring a function. Along with the data types, we are also having modifiers. These modifiers basically alter the function of a data type and make it more specific by the inclusion of additional provision. This includes signed, unsigned, long, and short. This signed, it is used to store 0, positive or negative values. Unsigned, it can store only 0 or positive values. Long is used to store larger integer number. The size of long type is 8 bytes. And the short, it is used to store small integer numbers. Its size is of 2 bytes. Now, what signed and unsigned in data types? We'll see that is with one example. Now suppose if we are having unsigned character, that is of 1 byte. In the 1 byte we are having total 8 bits. As we know, unsigned, it is nothing but it is used to store only 0 or positive value. So we can consider this 8 bit as a 0 to 2 raised to the power n minus 1. See, this n is a number of bits. So it gives the value from 0 to 255. Similarly, if we consider the signed character, that is of 1 byte. 1 byte means total 8 bits are there. So signed character. The signed character is used to store 0, positive, and negative values. So here in the signed character we are having 2 raised to the n minus 1 on negative side to 2 raised to the power n minus 1 on positive side. So here we are having the range that is from minus 128 to minus 1 in negative side and 0 to 127 on positive side. Now how this data is presented as signed and unsigned. If we are considering this 8 bits, if in this MSB if this value is 1, so it is treated as a negative number, and if this value is 0, it is treated as a positive number. So based on this 1 or 0 in the MSB, the machine will consider whether it is a negative value or the positive value. Here we are having a classification of data types with their size, range and format specifier. Here the size is differ from compiler to compiler, whether it is 16-bit compiler, 32-bit compiler and so on. The format specifiers are used in C for input and output purpose. Using this concept, the compiler can understand that what type of data is in a variable during taking input using the scanf function and printing using printf function. Here is a list of format specifier. That %C is used with the character type of data, %D which is used with the integer type of data, %F which is used with the floating type of data and so on.